First and foremost, thank you guys for giving me the opportunity to come in and talk at the Brownbag. Want to open it up for any questions that you guys may have about tequila in general, about Cruz Tequila, about how we've done what we've done in the market during the entire presentation. So feel free to raise your hand, ask any questions. But first and foremost, I guess I'll go into a little background about tequila. There's a lot to know about tequila. It is actually not made from a cactus, it's made from a succulent, part of the lily family, the agave plant, the blue Weber agave. There's two main types of tequila. There's what we call 100% agave, and then there's mixto style tequila. Mixto is the cheaper stuff, kind of the Jose Cuervos of the world. It's about 51% agave, 49% of the sugar, kind of caramel they use for color and for flavor. Now the 100% agaves, that's when you're going to get a little bit higher in the quality and in the price as well. Cruz Tequila is 100% blue agave. Now within the 100% blue agave, there's what we call, there's silver, reposado, and añejo. Those are the three main types in the 100% agave level. Now silver is the same thing as plata, blanco, platinum. It's all the same thing, it's just marketing behind the name. What that is it's a tequila that hasn't been aged, and if it has been aged, it's been less than 2 months. Now when I say aged, I mean in the tequila after it's been distilled, it actually sits in some kind of barrel. That can be oak, that can be a charred barrel that's been used for whiskey, whatever. That's the aging term. Reposado just means rested. That means the tequila's been sitting in some kind of barrel for a minimum of 2 months, up to a day before a year. Now once it hits that 1 year mark, that's what we call añejo, which is pretty much aged or old. And that is when you get those darker, more cognac, whiskey style tequilas. So those are the general types of tequila. Just a quick overview of how tequila is made. The agave itself, the plant, it looks like a pineapple pretty much. And you take the piña, which is the bottom part, the brown part, you dig that out of the ground after anywhere from 7 to 10 up to 12 years. You cut all the leaves off. What you get is this big ball, looks like the bottom of a pineapple. That is then cooked. After cooking, it's then pressed. The juice is then fermented. After fermentation, it goes into distillation. Now, tequila has to be distilled twice. You can't just distill it once, it's got to be twice. You can also distill it 3 times if you choose to do so. After that, you do the filtration and the resting that's necessary to make reposados and añejos, things like that. At this point, are there any questions about how tequila is made, the different types?
I have a question. So compared to like wine, is your process longer or shorter from plant to end product than making a wine or like a beer?
Well, the agave itself to grow takes anywhere from 7 to 10 years, so that process is much, much longer. But generally, it's the same amount of time, though wine and beer aren't distilled, so you have that extra amount of time. Mm-hmm. Now, the way that we cook our agave takes 2 whole days, whereas some other companies will cook it for about 2 hours because it's just quicker and actually cheaper to do that. But you lose a lot of the flavor in there, and you actually create more bitterness and spiciness when you do it the quick way. It's the same thing with wines. They can cook quicker or slower, but generally the rest of it, the fermentation, that's all pretty much the same across the board from all other beers and wines, things like that. Any more questions at this point?
Like region, does it matter what region?
Yeah, great question. So she had asked about the regions for tequila. Great question. Tequila has to be made in a specific region of Mexico called Jalisco. There's very, very small towns right on the border of Jalisco that have just recently been allowed to produce tequila, but it has to be made there. So you can't make tequila in California, in Texas, in South Africa. It's got to be done in Jalisco, Mexico. Can't even be done in Rocky Point. It's got to be done in that region. It's the same thing. It's just like bourbon. Same thing with champagne. It's to uphold the integrity of that region. So you can't make champagne in California. It has to be called sparkling wine. I don't know if you've seen that in like.
So what's the tequila that's made in other regions called?
They can't call it tequila, so it can be called fruit of the agave liqueur, things like that. There was a tequila company that was making tequila in California, and they were calling it tequila or something like that. And the Mexican government sued them, and they had to change the name because it was too close. So great question. Now on that, Cruz Tequila is actually locally owned and operated. Now what I mean by that is, of course, we're not made here in Arizona, can't be made here. When I say we're locally owned and operated, it's because we're all local guys. We base our operations out here. We even designed the bottle, drunk one night out of clay, out of Play-Doh pretty much. So it's a very homegrown, grassroots approach. We're small business owners, just like most of you here. And where we've really been able to distinguish ourselves is a number of different things. First and foremost, the flavor. You'll see, for those of you who are going to taste with us later, it's a soft, creamy style tequila that we're able to remove all that spiciness from the tongue and make it actually nice and soft. So it actually has a great, great flavor to it. Of course, the packaging does stand out. The packaging is all recycled materials, all hand-blown bottles, all hand-numbered as well. So they're actually a very small batch. And the bottles, like I said, all recycled materials. We also donate 7% of our profits back to local charities here in Arizona. We try to do as much as we can within the community as well. Also the story. So when people start to hear about our story, about Cruz Tequila, it's kind of catchy. People start to gravitate towards us and become fans right off the bat. How we started Cruz Tequila, we were pretty much just sitting around drinking with buddies, just like you guys do. And we ran out of booze, so we went to a liquor store. They recommended a reposado to us, and it just sucked. It wasn't that good. One of the guys who was with us, he's kind of drunk, and he goes, "Oh man, we can make a better tequila than this." And we look at him and go, "Yeah, James, you're right. We totally could." So it's really out of that need for a better tequila than what's out there. We think there's a lot of overpriced tequilas that are really only popular because of the rappers and the rock stars that endorse them. But when you actually take a second and taste them and taste the flavor, they're subpar. So we want to come out with something that was competitive at that price, but just a knockout on the flavor. And again, those who are going to taste with us, you'll see we're actually able to create this vanilla, citrus type of honey flavor instead of being spicy, instead of being bitter. And all of that is from the way that we produce the tequila. Very small batches. We take our time on each and every batch, and we do things that like slow cook our agave. We age our reposado in barrels that have been used for Jim Beam and Jack Daniels. Everything that we do is all for the quality of the product. So I guess at this point, does anyone have any questions about the brand, how we're made? And go ahead.
I told you I had lots of questions.
That's all right.
So when you look at the international tequila market, who would you say are your biggest, the big guys that you have to compete against? Is it like Jose Cuervo, where they're not even serving tequila, or is it like more a lot of little companies that you're competing against?
On an international, at a national, or
like who's the biggest tequila company right now? The
biggest tequila company right now in the entire world is Jose Cuervo. Now, they're not a direct competitor of ours because of the price point. It's like a 90-day, really.
Mm-hmm.
So they go after a different consumer than we do. Our biggest competitor out there is a company called Patron. They've been around for about 20 years, so they've really done their research. They've done the things out in the market. But fortunately for us, if you do a blind taste test with Patron, or really any of the tequilas that any of you prefer in the market, do a blind taste test with Cruz Tequila, and I think you'll be quite surprised. Now here in Arizona, Patron is also our biggest competitor. But as soon as we get people trying Cruz Tequila, as soon as we get people hearing our story and finding out that we're just a couple local guys, we're not owned by any giant conglomerate, and we actually do give back to the community, it's a very easy trade-off to Cruz Tequila.
So you mentioned target audiences. What's your target audience?
It's funny you asked that, because when we first started Cruz Tequila, we had a target demographic. It was ages of 21 to 35, upper echelon, whatever it may be. But we really found out that anyone who drinks tequila, for the most part, likes Cruz Tequila. Now, we've got the biker groups on board. We've got the Scottsdale, affliction guys on board. We've got the college, just scraping by kind of people on board. We've got the dirty, kind of dive bars, all the way up to the Scottsdale, cougars, all across the board. So you really, in this business, you really can't judge by the people that we're tasting. You can have, really any degree of people interested in Cruz Tequila. We're not the same demographics as the Jose Cuervos of the world, just purely because of the quality and the price. So there are some people out there that just say, I'm happy with Jose Cuervo, I'm happy with the price. That's no problem. Not really our demographic. We're going for the people who want a quality product at a great price.
I got another one for you. So Jose Cuervo makes like the Margarita Mixes and stuff, which is probably why they get a lot more of the market. is that something that the smaller companies can do? Have you even thought about it, like making those pre-made mixes, or is it just that's totally out of your league quality-wise?
No, actually not at all. That's a great question as well. If you guys didn't hear that, she's asking about different brands making margarita mixes. We are very particular about what we do with Cruz Tequila. We're very focused on quality. Now, the margarita mixes that you typically see out there, especially the ones made by the Jose Cuervos and the Sauzas, we actually want to stay as far away from that as possible, because what you have in there is high fructose corn syrup, syrups, sugars, and really you could put vodka in there and it would taste exactly the same in a margarita, because those sugars are so sweet and so tart. You can put anything in there. You can put vodka or beer. Now, when you mix with Cruz Tequila, we like to go with something a little more natural. We make our margaritas with agave nectar, fresh lime juice, and Cruz Tequila. That's it. Now, those margaritas are low carb, low calorie, low sugar, and the flavor is very, very soft. It's kind of like a lemonade almost, but it's very well balanced. You can taste every single ingredient in there. Now, if you use a subpar tequila and those type of ingredients, the ingredients clash, and then all you taste is tequila. So you have to be careful when mixing with those things, because fresh ingredients are fragile. Now, fresh ingredients are also fragile in the fact that they spoil quickly. So when making a pre-batch margarita like that, like you were saying, it's hard because it's got to be kept in the fridge, and it, without adding preservatives and other type of syrups and chemicals in there, it changes it completely. So on that note, we actually have recipes on our website. It's cruztequila.com/recipes, and you can see the majority of them are based with agave nectar and fresh lime juice, and then we can add things like cucumber or blueberries and basil to them. So different things, very easy to make at home. But yeah, those packaged things generally you want to kind of stay away from, unless it's, unless you're trying to go on the cheaper end, and it doesn't really matter with the quality.
You have to go through distribution for these?
Yeah, so she had asked how distribution works with liquor. Now, in Arizona, in every state actually in the United States, there it's a little bit different. Here we have what we call a 3-tier system. So it has to go from a supplier like us up to a distributor. Distributor, something like Republic National, Hensley, Budweiser, those are distributors. Then retailer. So retailer would be, like El Zocalo or Bevmo or Total Wine. Those are all what we consider retailers. Anyone who sends to the end consumer. So I cannot sell to any of you guys directly, nor can our distributor. It has to go through that 3-tier system.
Have you seen Beer Wars?
Pardon?
Have you seen Beer Wars?
No.
Documentary? Well, basically they talk about how difficult it is for local beer companies to get their stuff on the shelves, and I was wondering if it's as difficult for tequila.
Yeah, for those of you guys who didn't hear that, she was talking about the difficulties that we have in distribution. And with any brand out there, especially when you're launching, it's very, very difficult to get distribution out there. And you'll see out there that you pretty much see the same types of brands in the same restaurants and the same bars and the same liquor stores. Now, the way that we've been able to get the distribution that we have is really by building the relationships with the bartenders, the servers, the bar managers, the owners, the liquor store owners, those kind of things. Because to them, they really want whatever's going to make them money. So if we've got the things in place, if we're doing the events, the tastings, the things that make them money, it's an easy sell. But a lot of brands don't do that. They kind of go the easy way out and say, hey, I'll give you $1,000 if you carry our product. And it doesn't end up selling more product. They just sit on 5 cases of whatever they just sold in. So there are difficulties in the market. We see a lot of our competitors, smaller guys like us, having some very difficult times out there. A couple of them, just a very difficult time out there for us. And it's with beer, with wine, with liquors, because you have the big boys out there that spend lots of time and lots of money. It's harder for us to get into those places.
So when you were getting ready to launch Cruz Tequila, as part of your business plan, did you have like a certain time set aside for like relationship building? I mean, like, did you already have these relationships in place with the bars before you launched, or did you launch and then build those relationships?
We launched it and built those relationships, but we're not new to the bar and liquor stores. We've been there frequenting. It's not like we just came into a market that we had no idea and started from scratch. Fortunately, my partners have a huge network of friends and associates and colleagues that we can rely on for different things. But generally, the actual relationships that create sales and create the types of people that push our product. Those happen after we launched, and it takes a very, very long time to get those relationships. It's not something that happens overnight. It's not something that happens over a week. You really have to be dedicated to the job and dedicated to building those relationships. Otherwise, they fizzle and another brand comes in and builds the relationship.
So I have another one. So when you're going into bars, are you not really that picky about where your product is placed? Or are you pretty picky about what bars carry your product and how they serve your product?
We're picky about how they serve it. If we could, we would love every place that carries Cruz Tequila to make a margarita with fresh lime juice, agave nectar, Cruz Tequila. That's not always the case. Sometimes they'll make it with sweet and sour and kind of a lime syrup. That's okay. If their consumers are enjoying the margaritas that way, that's fine. People always ask me, how should I be enjoying Cruz Tequila? And really the best response is how you best enjoy tequila. People ask, should I chill it? Should I shoot it? Should I mix it? The best way that you like to enjoy tequila is the way you're going to enjoy it. So I would never tell you to chill it or to have it at room temperature. So however the consumer is going to enjoy Cruz, to enjoy it that way.
But have you ever told a bar, like, no, I'm not going to be carried in your place?
No, never. Now we do have specific places that are, obviously higher up in priority. Obviously Mexican restaurants are going to sell a lot more Cruz Tequila than a sushi hibachi bar. But it's all about the relationships that you build, because those sushi hibachi bars could sell a ton of Cruz Tequila if we built that relationship with them. So, you guys ever heard of something called Twitter or Facebook or anything like that?
No.
Twitter and Facebook and the social medias out there have been a huge tool for us to just get great exposure out there. And when we have our events, when we have our tastings, we have different things out there. We promote those on our social mediums, and you guys know the value on that already, so I don't need to go too deep into that, but that has been a huge tool for us, and any of you guys who are working on small businesses, especially those that interact specifically on the consumer level, that's a huge tool, and I definitely recommend take advantage of those tools and those resources.
What would you say was the biggest challenge to starting in such a unique industry?
The biggest challenge for us was really re-education. People have in this mindset of what tequila should be, how it should be served, salt, lime, things like that. So our biggest challenge is just re-education. When people think that all there is in the tequila world is something like Jose Cuervo, it's great for us to re-educate people, but it is at the same time hard because people have this preconceived, this is how it should be. You have to have salt, you have to have lime. It's a whole experience. Now with tequila like Cruz Tequila, you don't need salt, you don't need lime, because salt and lime is created for the gringo to be able to stomach bad tequila. That's actually why it's created. It's the same thing why people salt the rim of margaritas, because it's the same thing. There's typically that conceived notion where margaritas should be made with sweet and sour and syrups and subpar tequila, and that's okay. That's why they salt the rim, so you don't have to experience all that tart and that sweet. So, I guess to answer your question, re-education is the biggest challenge that we've experienced, and we experience that every single day. But we love it. That's what we love doing.
So how do you go about re-educating your consumers?
Well, re-education just happens by building the relationship with the consumer. So we're not the kind of brand that if you see us at a tasting, we've got a tray of shots, and you just come up, you take it, and you leave. We actually like to give you an experience where either you're sipping it or you're shooting it, whatever it may be. We're actually going to tell you, how it's made, introduce ourselves, our name. It's not just some big boob girl giving out shots. So creating that experience actually lets people open their eyes and actually absorb the message and absorb what we're telling them, not just giving them a free shot.
So how would you do that on you talked about social media being a marketing effort. Have you ever done traditional marketing? Like print, billboards, that sort of thing?
We have.
What has the message been on that? Because I'm kind of wondering how you fit re-education into an ad that you would put in a magazine.
Re-education is primarily done on a one-on-one basis. Print and traditional forms of advertising are very difficult because people are so just void of it. They see it every single day, so things like the social media and the untraditional type of guerrilla marketing that we do is much more effective than for us at least, than typical marketing.
Other questions?
you guys have any questions about tequila, please, this is the time to ask. There really are no stupid questions about tequila at all.
What is the best way to enjoy tequila? I know you said that you can enjoy it any way that you like. There's always like a certain way that will best enhance the flavor.
Sure.
Like the best way to start drinking tequila,
Sure.
maybe.
So the gentleman asked, what's the best way to enjoy Cruz tequila? Now, if you really want to get into it, the best type of glass for Cruz tequila is actually something that closely resembles a champagne glass. So you'll see that some people try to enjoy tequila in what looks like a brandy sniffer, and that doesn't always work. The tall, skinny type of champagne glass, we use a Riedel stemware or a Riedel stemware. It delivers the aromas perfectly for tequila, for Cruz tequila. Now, if you're actually tasting tequila, the best way to do it is room temperature. As soon as you start to chill tequila, whether you put it in the fridge or whether you shake it with ice, you can hide anything in tequila when you do that. So there's nothing wrong with doing it that way, but if you actually want to taste it and enjoy the complexities that we have in the tequila, room temperature all the way. And tequila is much like scotch. If you add just a little bit of water or an ice cube to it, it opens up a lot like scotch does. So if that's the way you enjoy drinking things like scotch, then try it with tequila, try it with Cruz. I think the flavors are very cool.
Does that apply to all three styles? The reposado, Aneo, and silver?
Actually, very good question. So typically, yes, room temperature and the style of glass, yes, the same. Now, silvers are generally for shooting. That's just typically the way it's done. Now, the reason for that is because silvers are typically more harsh for the end consumer. People now, especially Americans, have really gravitated towards the flavor of silver, so that's starting to slowly fade away. We've actually created a silver that is sippable, which is very, very hard to find. It's sippable because of the softness, the creaminess, and the honey citrus flavors that we've got, the vanilla notes. Now, typically, yes, the silvers are for shooting, but this one you can sip. Reposados, which is that middle stage, again, that is for sipping. You can also mix that as well. Silvers are for mixing as well. The next step, añejos, for the most part, you're not supposed to mix with an añejo. Now you can, there's nothing wrong with that, but typically the mixing is primarily for the silver and then second for the reposado. Añejos, it's the same thing with reposados. When you drink it, what you're supposed to do is put the tequila in your mouth, let it sit for anywhere from 5 to 10 seconds, swallow it, and then slowly breathe out with your nose and mouth. So it's very
It's a pretty elaborate process.
a very elaborate process to it, but for the most part, that's for like professional like judging and things like that, for contests and things like that. Your average consumer won't be able to taste the difference when it's breathing in the mouth and the nose. Just leave it in your mouth for about 5 to 10 seconds, and you'll see the difference. Now, on that note, we actually are award-winning. In the 2 years that we've been in market, we've actually won 8 awards. The silver just came out in November. It's already won 2 awards, and the reposado actually won the gold medal at the San Francisco Spirits Competition. So, it's not just us singing our own praises. We do have third-party, legitimate San Francisco Spirits competitions back in our flavor profile, which is a huge, huge compliment to us. It took us 3 years to come out with that flavor profile, so it's great to hear that people are really enjoying it out there, especially the official judges.
So you talked about how this company kind of started with you guys needing alcohol and not being around. So how would you guys know you had a good tequila to the general market other than just you guys liked it? How did you know it was good for the general market? Did you have a professional taste tester come in, or?
No, we are experiencing a lot of tequilas out there in this market that are spicy and that are peppery, and that is a very typical type of tequila flavor. There's nothing wrong with that. Actually, the best-selling tequila in Mexico is probably one of the harshest and most spicy tequilas, but that's what that demographic likes. Mexico just loves that traditional style tequila. We, as in, the rest of the world, is starting to gravitate towards something that's more soft and more, actually a sweet style, which is kind of where we envisioned and we went with. And it wasn't just like a bunch of guys and we said we liked it and we went with it. We had a whole team of women, believe it or not, that we wanted to impress with this. So, like I said, it took us 36 batches, 3 years to come out with it. If all of the girls didn't like it, it wasn't good. It wasn't a go.
Why women?
Well, because
Do we have better palates?
no, not necessarily. But if we can get both men and women to enjoy Cruz Tequila at room temperature, we got a hit. The majority of the people out there need to chill tequila to enjoy it. So if people who maybe have a more delicate palate, like some of the women that we had tasting it, if they can enjoy it at room temperature, we got it. That's the taste. That's the flavor we wanted. Exactly. Because we don't want something that's too sweet that guys say, oh, this isn't really good. And not something that's too harsh that women aren't going to like. So that's kind of where we went with the flavor.
Other questions?
Is there like a professor of recipes or something? You go through these 36 batches and you play with it.
Pardon?
Is there like, how do you come up with a flavor? Like, do you guys do that, or do you have a professional that does it, or 36 batches and they all taste different? Right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So there's almost 2,000 or so different tequilas out there, and I'd say for the most part they all taste a little bit different. So there's so many ways that you can manipulate the flavor of the tequila while staying at 100% agave. Of course you can manipulate it by adding flavors, but you have to stay at that 100% agave, of course. So everything from where you get the agave, whether it's the low region or the high regions, just like wine where you grow, it has different flavors. How you cook the agave, the actual agave itself, how big it is, the sugar content, just cutting out the stamen root. If the stamen root shot up, do you discard it? Do you quarter it or do you half it? That's all just in the agave. Plus there's the cooking techniques, the crushing techniques, the fermentation, the type of yeast you use. All those different things have a vast difference in the flavor of a tequila. So when we went to the master distiller that we knew down in Mexico, we told him exactly what we wanted. We wanted something that was different from what's out there. And he, with the help of the rest of the master distillers that we talked to, developed a way to come out with a flavor like that. I don't want to go into too specifically because I don't want to give away our secret, but everything that we do takes a lot more time than your typical tequila. But we take extra special care because if the quality goes down in the product, what are we standing on at this point? So yes, if it wasn't for the master distiller, we would have never got to where we were at.
How'd you find him?
Pardon?
How'd you find him?
When we were all sitting together drinking about 4 years ago, and trying to come out with an idea, one of our guys got on the phone speaking Spanish for about 20 minutes. He hangs up. He says, "Hey, we're going down to Guadalajara in about a month, pretty much." So it was really that immediate. We're going to do this. Let's go. And the guy that he was on the phone with, we call him our Mexican MacGyver. Great guy down in Mexico. He's pretty much an inventor down there, and he has a whole list or a network of friends, family, specifically family, in the tequila industry. So it was a very easy transition for us because, in all honesty, if you go down to Mexico with 3 gringos, it's going to be very, very difficult, very expensive to start a tequila company. So fortunately, we have 2 of our partners are from Mexico, so they have that whole network of family that are running the distillery.
Other questions? All right, thank you, Todd.
Great. Thank you guys for giving me the time.